Dear learners, warm greetings and welcome back to another session of Research Methodology for Tourism and Hospitality Management. In the last module, we have seen in detail the analysis process. I have shown you some example from the field note or the observations which was part of my research project. Now, before going into today's lecture, once again I remind you, in qualitative data analysis, the researcher has to read the manuscript repeatedly. Manuscript here means the transcript. Transcription, number one, taking place at the local language. Imagine I am conducting an interview, I am noting down the points in local language, the vernacular language in which I am conducting the interview. And in the second phase, you may have to transcribe that into English or Hindi or the language which you are going to present your dissertation or thesis. So there is a three-level process happening. At first, you are writing the interview details while you are conducting the interview. In the second phase, you are converting it into the English or Hindi or the language which you have to submit your work. And at the third phase, you have to analyze the data which you have at your hand. So there is a question arises. You are analyzing in the software normally the English transcript. So you have conducted the interview in a vernacular language. How it is going to work? So in my experience, I use the English transcript to do the qualitative data analysis. Vernacular language, I try to complete the interview, but I have to translate it into English, and the process of translation is risky at times because at times it may lose the original meaning. So let us start today's session while remembering the coding types. Last class, last module, we discussed coding, which is a very important part of qualitative data analysis. And in today's module, let us see what we are going to study. We will be studying different types of codes, and these codes, why we use and how we have to use. The reference sources I am using is Saldana, Miles and Uberman, or you can also use Susan Frazee, who authored Thematic Content Analysis, if you are using Atlas TI software. So you have different types of files, that is observation note, field note, research diary. You have the interview transcript. You may have audio files. You may also have video files, pictures, etc. So all these we can do coding. Coding is identifying a particular meaning of a segment and giving a label to that. So in effect, it is a kind of labeling process. The field notes could be sketchy, means while somebody speaks, you may note it fast, so you may use abbreviation. And converting the field notes into a usable write-up is the challenge for the researcher. So with this background note, let us start the types of coding. So what is a data chunk? Data chunk is a part of a passage. Imagine a paragraph where you are attaching a label for that. This label captures the meaning of the paragraph. So the wider meaning is the code is a representative for that paragraph. Codes are very important part of our analysis. Why? You remember the example I quote, codes are like bricks for a building. Codes retrieve the data chunks and it also retrieve the descriptive information. According to Saldana, the very first time when we try to create a label, we can consider that as the first cycle code. And this is according to the own understanding of the researcher. Remember, what you feel, that is reflected in the terms of the code. So imagine there is a paragraph which describes the natural beauty. Let me imagine it and share you like this. The valley of Kashmir is blessed with scenic beauty, the presence of lakes or the mountain view or the orchards, the clear sky and a cool breeze. This all attract tourists to the valley of Kashmir. So I am describing this. So what code I may use? A short phrase, tourist, the attractors, means what are the attracting features, or another person may find this may not be suitable, so the attributes of tourist attraction, or you can write a number of such words, alternative, attraction. So what are the three short phrases I noted here? One is attractors, second one is attributes of tourist attraction, third one is attractions itself. What is this called? This is called descriptive coding, and this is useful. At times you may use the code directly from the passage, a particular term which you found useful, that we call in vivo coding. What is in vivo coding? Here the researcher is directly borrowing the word used by the interviewee, and in the transcript how it appears, same that you are using, that we call in vivo coding. Something which represent actions. For example, scuba diving or jet boat skiing. The tourists show a lot of interest to do water sports activities in Goa. So as a tourist, when I visited Goa, I participated in water sports activities. So the action which represent, that is termed as process coding. At times the emotions come up, and that emotions can be happiness, sadness, right? A number of emotions that an individual is having. So imagine I am very hungry and I am angry right now. So my emotion is anger. So to cool down my anger, my friend said, let us go to a restaurant. Let us have a good food. I agreed. Then when we enter into the restaurant, there was a slow music and the ambience was very pleasant. I liked the food, the order made by my friend, and after having the food, I was very happy. So the happiness, from anger, I reached to a stage happiness. So these emotions, we can say emotion coding. So in this slide, 4 different types, that is descriptive coding, in vivo coding, process coding, emotion coding. Next is evaluation coding. Human beings have a tendency, we assess things. At times we say we judge people. So let us use the term assessment. What is your assessment on certain cases or certain issues based upon its merit or the significance of a particular program? So this evaluation coding help to understand, the performance of certain thing is worth, or it deserve merit, or the implementation of a particular program, is it useful? So such kind of assessment. what we call here evaluation coding. At times we find people use abbreviations. Let me compare it with the WhatsApp language or the language that we use for texting. In the text messages, we use several codes. That is, in qualitative data analytic terms, it is called dramaturgical coding. What is dramaturgical coding? So what did I write here? Attitude against ATT. Emotions, EMO. So a number of emotions people may have. Imagine you interviewed 5 people. 5 different kind of emotions you find in them. If one person explained you things in a cool, in a very happy mood, then another person may be a bit upset. Maybe like the respondent may look emotional at times. So you can use EMO happy, EMO angry, EMO sad, right, like that. So this is appropriate for using anonymity one way, but if you have several features, you can use it with one by one. In exploratory method, we can find holistic method is a large chunk of data is represented by a single code, where line by line coding is not advised. So remember once again, a paragraph may have 10 or 12 lines. So it can be more at times. So holistic coding, here it indicates you can use a data chunk which could be represented by a single code. What about provisional coding? So the provisional coding, you already prepare a list so that list could be used while you read a particular interview transcript. At times I use this. How? At the first reading of a transcript, I develop some set of codes in my mind. So when I feed it in computer, when I go through the next transcripts, if the same thing comes, I can use the prepared code that we call provisional coding. Then another category is hypothesis coding. These codes are emerged from theory, and this we can find where? In our data. Another type of coding is called causation coding. In causation coding, we are trying to extract the causal belief from the participant. Here you can identify antecedents, you can find mediators and moderators, or you can find the consequence too. So let me explain causation coding with a story here. See, I am describing a phenomena in which how a storm impacted an area. The storm washed away the huts near the sea. All the savings and utensils that we had, it has been taken away by the sea. So it was completely dark. There was no electricity in the area. The volunteers, when they came with the torch lights, that helped us to go out of our house. Where we reached was a storm shelter. There was no life at risk. When the storm stopped the next day morning, we could realize that where we stayed, whatever we gained, all over the lifetime, is all damaged or destroyed, and it left with just a heap of sand. So it is a story, appears like any place that you feel maybe after tsunami or after a storm, after you can find a landslide, similar stories appear. So what comes into my mind? The cause is storm. And what mediated or moderated? There is rain. It is not just a storm. And there is tide. right? I can draw an image here. One is storm, then storm attacks the house properties damaged. What is added effect? Rain, heavy rains. And the second one is, if the properties nearby sea, the tide. So these impact. So when we try to identify the cause and the effect and the intervening factors, that becomes causation coding. Next example which I wish to quote here is attribute coding. Causation coding and attribute coding we can use in our research. You know, we all like food. I don't know whether you are hungry at this point of time, but imagine I am hungry, so I need to eat something. So what is my choice of food? Right? It depends upon my preferences, my eating habits. I am explaining you a situation here. Many cities in India, we have food street. When you go foreign countries, food streets are very popular. By evening, the streets get crowded. So I am just explaining you a story where, being a tourist, I like street food. My passion to explore the street food, and this is had to be very delicious. And there are numerous shops set up in the evening, and you can find different kind of snacks or eatables where the visitors, they taste the local delicacies on the streets. So the entire air, that air is filled with the flowers or spices, and you know, the scent appealing, it is so appealing that water comes in your mouth. There are vegetarian and non-vegetarian dishes available. The food type include deep fried items, steamed food, boiled dishes, which caters to the age group of all. Tourists, whether they are couples, family, groups, they flock into the street food market. And this gives them a wonderful gastronomic experience of the region. Now let us see the attribute coding here. What are the attributes? You could make it up. One attribute is street food. I could find another one indicating delicious. Then the type of food items, that is snacks, eatables. Then local delicacies. Then we can find the flowers of spices. Then we can find vegetarian, non-vegetarian. Then further explained it as deep fried, steamed, boiled dishes. So these all are attributes of different, it represents certain things like deep fried, steamed, boiled dishes. These represent the dishes. And the locality, you can find the flavors of spices or the food, cooked food scent, that is indicating the locality. Then we can find, the area, street food market. We can identify the descriptors, what is described through adjectives, what is described to express certain things. So attribute coding is one of the coding that we use in qualitative data analysis. So what is the process of coding, the mechanics that we can use here? One is pre-coding and second one is jottings. Jottings I will explain you in detail in the next slide. So according to Emerson, Fraser and Shaw, we can think of some questions. This is at the time of pre-coding. What are these? Very simple questions. What people are doing in a location, how they are doing it, what strategies they use, how do the people talk about a particular aspect. So do I have to include it in my notes? What did it give me? A learning part or just a kind of passing the information? Let me take the example of the food street. Now let us see it from the local people perspective. You find that the street food market is occupied by normally people from the region, same area. So what are they doing? They are doing business. What kind of business? They are exploring the food market. Now, how they are doing? They might be doing individually or they might be doing collectively. How they use different strategies? I don't know. We have not mentioned anything on the marketing aspect, but the terms which we find, mouth watering, the flavors of spices, right? Delicacies. So, do I have to include in my thesis? It is up to the researcher how it suits at a different context. Some other points to note here is, you can either do coding individually your own, and imagine at times teachers give you group assignment. At a UG and PG level, if you are doing a group assignment, if you 2 or 3 people are there, you can sit down and individually try to come out with coding. So that we can say collaborative coding. And a PhD scholar is concerned, maybe when they are writing papers and all, their collaborators, they can sit and do the coding, and at the end you can compare what percentage of this is similar. Imagine there are 2 or 3 researchers, they are doing the coding work. So when you complete the work, you can compare it, and that we call inter-coder reliability and validity. Say for example, I am using a particular code, attraction. Someone else is using that scenic beauty. Someone else is using it is a scenery. So what extent the terms which are coming in a homogeneous direction, a particular meaning in one direction. So intercoder, that is called intercoder reliability and validity. Now some prerequisites. Being a researcher, you should develop creativity to develop codes. You should be patient. It cannot be a quick work. It needs time. I told you, reading transcripts repeatedly, it may sound boring. So you should be patient enough and flexible. At times you may get a new idea. It is not necessary in the single reading, first day you can come out with fantastic codes. Maybe after a week or after 10 days, you may find a new term that you can associate with. Then you have to deal with ambiguity. Means you have to clear the doubts of the reader. Then you need perseverance. You should not step down if you feel like you can't do it, that kind of feeling. Then it should be ethical. We discussed in detail about the ethical aspects in the previous slide. Now what is second cycle coding? We call this pattern coding. In second cycle coding, we have major aspect like 4 functions. That condensation of large data, stay focused with the fieldwork, and elaborate the local understanding in a more appropriate manner. You may use multi-case studies to do cross-analysis. So, dear learners, in the previous slides you have seen different type of coding that is used as first cycle coding. In the first cycle coding, once again I summarize that we use descriptive coding, emotions coding, process coding, a number of examples that we have used. In second cycle coding, you are developing a meaning of the first cycle codes. You can club some of these first cycle codes and come out with a latent theme. And that latent theme captures the meaning of the first cycle codes. That means it is an advanced level of your thinking. We also find a pattern coding. What pattern is emerged from the manuscript? The pattern emerged from the transcript include the categories. We can find certain categories, certain explanations or causes, some kind of relationships among the people, or some theoretical constructs. So let me draw a small diagram explaining. You have open code A, B, C, D, and this is going to constitute a pattern. That pattern can be a particular theme. That theme include, I say about tourism and happiness. Okay, happiness means tranquility, gives you a kind of meditative feeling, or you find a fulfillment after reaching a location, or you feel happy about a change that you find in your life, or you may also feel enjoyable in a particular condition because of the climate and all. So all these are different aspects of happiness. So the pattern, how tourism is bringing happiness. So the experts say you should not quickly come into a conclusion that may lead to locking in. Locking in means you identified and fixed it. It can be covered in broad categories. We will complete in another 2 slides about the type of coding. So here one example I wish to quote is focused coding. So we have to, if the researcher is specific with the research question, he would be looking into a specific category, then the focused coding take place. Say the transcript, when we scan or when we read, the researcher's eye go to such points which is required along with that research question. That we can say focused coding. In axial coding is used in grounded theories where we are trying to link the fractured sentences. Means when we do the initial coding, line by line, we have developed codes, open codes. But while we are doing axial coding, it looks like a pattern development. So you can use axial coding, you can assign a latent construct name, that we use axial coding process. This is an example of axial coding. I have gone through a transcript and I found I have a lot of memories of my childhood, and these memories are often my experience with my old friends in school. So these memories I have given a term called nostalgia. This nostalgia is influencing me to visit my school again. At present I may be 40 years old. I spent a good number of years in my school, and there are my friends who are living nearby the school. So when I think about my school or my friends, nostalgia strikes me. So like this you can develop categories, and that categories into latent construct. So the latent construct here I have said is motivation. The first cycle code is, that is memory, and the second cycle code you can say this is nostalgia. So in quantitative terms it becomes HOC, higher order construct. What is jotting? Jotting is a sticky note. So now you may ask me, what is a sticky note? Sticky note is small pieces of paper in which we write our task. That means, in the office if you go, you have to do this work at first priority, second priority kind of thing. So here jottings means the researcher use jottings with a meaning, and there is a specific statement attached to it. Some personal reactions to some participants' comments. While I take the practical example here. See, we have seen tourist guides explaining monuments or the importance of site. So as a jotting, what I do, if I am writing that the expression of tourist guide, it is large, exaggerative. Okay, if you read and you are knowing about the place before you reach a site, you already have some idea. But when a tourist guide explains, if it is factual, you can write factual. If it is exaggerative, you can take exaggerative as a jotting. So these kind of jottings, point to point, writing, that will also are part of qualitative data analysis. We also have to identify cross references. This can be treated again as jottings. So if you have any doubts on the quality of some data, that will also help you. For example, when during the interview process, the respondent may not be clear about a certain concept, confused, or maybe having lack of clarity. The jottings can help you at this stage. So analytical memos, which I already shared you in the previous slide. Quickly once again I will summarize what is analytical memo and how it is helpful. These memos are a kind of reflection of the researcher. Remember this thing. When you transcribe, when you develop codes, what strikes in your mind as a secondary information, you write it. That we can call analytical memo. How it is useful? This is useful for developing framework or models. So do you think in qualitative data analysis we can develop framework? Yes, of course. I told you we have open coding in the beginning and it can take you to latent coding. So a number of open codes we can connect with a latent code, or there can be moderators that influence the relationship. So we can develop framework. Your memos can be helpful in formulating these models. It can identify patterns or categories. It can also identify the theories and the future direction of your study. Let us conclude. Dear students, I am sure that you got some new perspective on qualitative data analysis in today's lecture. We have taken some examples and all these examples are realistic examples. When you do the coding process, you will come across the same. You may describe some phenomena, or you may use process coding, or you may use memo, and you will be knowing how useful all these tools are while you doing a systematic research work. So qualitative data analysis process include identifying appropriate codes and creating analytical memos, using code and memos to develop concept, framework or theory. This will make your study more reliable and valid. I hope this session was useful for all of you. If you have any doubts, please come back to me. Thank you.